today's webinar, which is how to make your agents more productive. I'd like to now take you through today's agenda. I'll be doing the introductions. I'm Jonty Pearce, editor of Call Center Helper, and I'm delighted to introduce two very experienced speakers to you. Paul Cooper, who's with Customer Plus, was previously director at the Institute of Customer Service, and Paul is going to take us through how to make agents more productive. I've known Guy Tweedale from OpenSpan for quite a number of years now, very entertaining to be with. And Guy's going to take us through the efficient agent, some lessons from the field. We're then going to run on top tips from the audience, which is your chance to have your say, and then interactive questions and answers, live questions and answers from the audience. And then I'd like to hand across now to Paul Cooper. Paul is going to take us through a presentation about how to make your agents more productive. So Paul, if you'd like to put your slides up and start by introducing yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonty. And perhaps maybe the first thing I should do is just a quick introduction of myself. Yes, I'm a director of Customer Plus, and this is news for you, Jonty. Came in this morning. We've just been shortlisted for the 2012 Marketing Excellence Awards for our Retail Moments of Truth program. So that's rather new and breaking news, so I'm rather proud of that. Yes, I've been a director of Customer Plus for a couple of years, and before that helped set up and then run the Institute of Customer Service for, well, nearly 14 years, I suppose it was. And before that, Ford Motor Company and various other things. So that's me out of the way. That's a nice picture of us two back in the days when we were both a little younger. I just want to cover some issues first on why this is important, because obviously agents either do a good job or a bad job, but it's getting more out of them basically because the customer says that it makes sense. First of all, this is some research by BT, done by Nicola Millard's team. 86% of people say that a good experience with a contact center agent impacts positively on their loyalty to an organization. That's a massive amount. And 83% of people just want organizations to make it easier to deal with them. I mean, how complicated can that be? And if we look at the other side of it, from the internal part, from a business point of view, these are a couple of great quotes. I love these from really superb companies. Many banks offer some or all of what we do, except for one thing. The only difference that can't be copied is the way we do things around here. And that's First Direct, who tend to be the biggest winners of any customer service awards that are around year after year after year. And also Next, who are a terrific company. The first step is to recognize that good management starts with good people. All the processes in the world will not make up for weak individuals. So have call centers really changed that much over the past few years? Well, actually not. I mean, this is some research we did just 2 or 3 years ago with the ICS, but I'm sure it's still the same because I'm still talking to contact center people now. And the two biggest issues in most call centers from the agents and, in fact, from the team managers as well is nobody ever tells me anything, nobody ever asks me anything, even though we are the ones who are talking to customers and we're the ones that could actually make quite a lot of difference. And there's still patronization within those call centers. And we used to call it the test of what can't you do at work that you can do at home. And we can all think of things like that. So a few years ago, it was a bit trendy to look after these poor dear agents, all of you, and say, well, these horrible customers give you so much stress. Let's do some stress management stuff. So again, we looked at this stuff. And you know what happened? 73% of the stress in call centers tends to come from the technology, in other words, internally. The system doesn't work. It crashes. It freezes. The software itself doesn't do the job that it should do. So actually, the agents themselves, strangely enough, because they work in a call center, want to help the customer. And they are almost on the customer side. But the system itself is causing them to stress because it's not working properly. And the other major issue that came up was training. They're just not given all the skills that are needed, that are in the need to get these people to work their best. And I'm not just talking agents here, I'm talking managers as well. And I guess the final point that kept coming up time and time again was we're measuring everything, but a lot of it doesn't even get looked at, and is it really effective? So those are the sorts of things that I want to look at in the next few slides. I also wanted to just bring this one in because this is something that came up when I was doing quite a lot of judging for awards programs around the country. And this came up from a major card center. We stopped over-controlling the amount of time agents spent on the phone. And of course, average call handling time went up 10 seconds. But overall call volume went down 10% due to improved call resolution and first-time resolution. And that's a mega saving just by putting in the right forms of management and, let's be honest, the right forms of trust and empowerment to our agents. And just the last question I want to ask everybody before I then pull it all together with a couple of answering slides, if you like, is so many companies, and I'm not knocking this, do customer satisfaction surveys. But why are they doing them? Are they doing them to please the bosses? Because if they are, that's really just fear. If they're doing them for self-gratification, well, very well, but that's a bit of conceit. And if they're doing them to please staff, that's a bit patronizing. There is only one good reason, and this comes out of the issue about getting more productivity and more listening and more everything from our people. It's to learn how to improve the system, the training, the sales techniques if it's a sales call or a service technique. Those are all the key issues. And the final question I would ask everyone out there, and I keep bringing this one up, it was actually in our article in Call Center Helper last month, is I am really, really worried about people that put targets in that are, say, 92% first time resolution or 94% of answering the phone in 4 rings or whatever. Because that also smacks a little bit of an over-controlled and over-systemized organization. What is wrong with having every target, every meaningful target, 100%, but then knowing that you're not always going to make it, but at least then finding out why you didn't make it so that you can improve it next time? I just think it's very important time and time again to just say, look, really, the objective here is to just be so good that it's 100%. After all, if airline pilots didn't have a 100% target for takeoff and landings, I don't think we'd want to be flying with those planes.
That's a very good point.
Okay, I'm just going to pause for a poll here. So Jonty's just going to take control for a few moments. And the poll is all about how we empower our agents.
Okay, I'd like to just run a poll now. We want to look at how empowered your agents are. So rather than asking a yes-no question, we want to ask you some questions about empowerment. You can tick as many as are appropriate. So how empowered are agents? So tick if they can spend as long as they like on the phone with the caller. Tick if they can offer a £10 compensation to the customer on the call without needing to ask permission. Tick if they can take ownership of the problem until it's resolved. Tick if they can choose their own shift patterns. Or tick if they can provide instant feedback on their performance. So just like to vote on that. Take possibly a little while to do that. I mean, Guy, I mean, I think sort of interesting one to me is the compensation on the call. Do you think that's going to be something that many people are going to answer?
I think it's going to be an interesting one to see the results on this one, Jonty, especially I think the last one there in terms of providing instant feedback on performance. I think there's not very many systems available today that will allow to provide instant feedback on performance and those kind of things. So I'm especially also interested in the offer of £10 compensation to the customer because I've had some interesting conversations recently with some companies I won't name where compensation was threatened but never delivered.
Well, let's share the results and see how empowered our agents are. Well, quite encouraging. 55% of people can spend as long as they like on the phone. I guess that means there's an awful lot who can't. Only a quarter could actually offer compensation as low as £10 during a conversation with the customer. Okay, 72% can take ownership of a problem, and 25% can take their own shift patterns, and 35% can provide instant feedback. Paul, I think a lot of those, apart from taking ownership, sort of not terribly high.
Well, no, but actually I am quite encouraged because I bet you if we did that 3 years ago, they would have been a lot lower. So I think particularly the spending more time on the phone, hopefully in many places we have got over this. You've got 28 seconds to make the call, however important it is. I'm quite encouraged by the 25% on £10 actually, because that is a bit of a risk for an organisation in their own minds. Now, I don't think it's a risk at all, because I think the agent probably will save the company an enormous amount of money by doing it. But it is a bit of a step into the unknown. So what I find interesting is that they're not quite what I expected, and that's all makes for an interesting poll.
So if you've got any experience in the audience about compensation, offering that to people and the pitfalls or whether it's worked or not, just leave your comments in the box. That would be great. So thank you for the audience for the poll. I'm going to pass back to Paul now, if you'd like to carry on.
Okay, I'm just going to now bring this together in two things. First of all, I want to talk about metrics, because metrics can often be basically an excuse. And these are my golden rules. I don't usually say perhaps or maybe. This is what I think. And this is based upon experience and feedback from the good companies. I tend to be lucky enough to work with good organizations and good companies in both public and private sector. So I think most of them would agree with me on this. First of all, the most important thing, measuring the right things, not the easiest things. Particularly in things like CRM, there are so many things that could be measured, but measuring the right things. The second one is only measuring the things that will be looked at and analyzed and acted on is probably the most important element of that. Now, all the other stuff you can look at till the cows come home, but if they're not being looked at, then there's really not much point. Then it's measuring what's relevant to the time and the need, and that can change over time. It might just be a unique thing like a particular marketing program, but very often it can be if you've sorted one particular thing and you're really confident, well, stop doing it and then measure something different. The next one is to look for and act on trends, not one-offs. And I know some examples of people that gets customer surveys in, and then just because one customer mentions something, suddenly the whole company has to jump up and down and find out reasons for it. Look for trends and look for fixable trends. Remember, the mistake, particularly in complaints, is not making the mistake, it's making the mistake twice. And then a little bit of a cynicism will creep in here. Remember human nature with agents and with managers. If you just set a target and you haven't thought through the real reason why you're doing it, staff will see it's important. Tom Peters used to say the biggest problem is our staff do listen to what we say, not they don't listen to what we say. But if it's got anything to do with money, they'll find ways. And I put cheat in it. I don't mean cheat by being dishonest. I mean cheat by they'll find ways around it. They'll press different buttons and they'll do different this and do different that, especially if a bonus is involved. Again, it was a Tom Peters thing. Most people who have been very successful in companies, and I hope I would be part of that, will proudly say, yes, we cheated our way to the top. We found ways to do things and get things approved that other people didn't, and therefore succeeded. So just remember that little bit. And if there are ways around that are beneficial to the company, just let them go on doing it, because it helps them. So let's bring all this thing together now so that we can then get everybody talking. We tend to forget the most important element of the lot, hiring the right people in the first place. Whether you're going to use skill-based recruitment or whether you're going to use other different methods, do try and get the right place. And that doesn't always mean people that have worked in other call centers. The next thing is a really strong, comprehensive induction program and then ongoing coaching and training for two reasons. First of all, so that the people feel confident when they finally get on the phones. And secondly, as a second weeding out process, so that if these people really aren't going to make it and are not the right people, you can stop it before they get to be dangerous. Then introducing as much empowerment as possible, and this is something that senior management is not good at, giving people the power that they need. They can give them token empowerment, but doing more than that, letting people follow their own nose in the main is a good thing. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody should be allowed it. You could have different levels within a call center, and you can have people with more authority than others. The next one I just mentioned before, having clear targets, clear objectives, your culture is clear to the staff, and clear practices. Then measuring the right thing and feedback, using positive strokes to develop responsibility. There's a lot of research that says if you get onto people and if you complain about people more than about 10% of the time, then they think you've got it in for them. So more positive strokes on what they do right, catch them doing things right, and that way you'll develop much better employee satisfaction. Have some clear and well understood career and job opportunities. I know careers in a call center aren't always extensive, but you can have different levels, you can have different rewards, and you can move people about for job interest. And finally, and this is what a lot of organizations don't understand, have an active program to make sure they stay. It is awful to come in on a Monday morning and your best people come up to you and say, I'm leaving. That should not come as a surprise, but it shouldn't happen in the first place, because there should be a program that says, you are good. metaphorically putting your arm around somebody and saying, we really appreciate you being there. So those are my top tips. Let's take it on from there, Jonty. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Paul. I think that's great. I think certainly things like catching people doing the things right is really a great way, because we often in things like performance management tend to pick up on those negative things. So I think that's very, very positive. So thank you very much for that, Paul. We've had a bit of feedback from the audience about compensation. Nicholas said our agents can offer products or services as compensation rather than money or refunds, discounts. So I guess that's quite a nice one if they're not so dissatisfied they want to leave you, Paul. Have you seen much of that?
Yeah, I think it's coming. I mean, in a slightly different environment, not a call center environment, Marriott hotels are very famous for giving every member of staff, I think it's $200 that they can use at the right places. And then when they measured the program, they were handing out a lot less compensation than if their finance staff or their senior management were allowed to do it, because actually some customers can try it on, and the agents can see through that. And some agents can see a small amount, not always in money, but in other things, can make a real difference.
Yeah, and we've had a comment from Dave who said compensation can be offered in many ways. We work on a price match and have agent discretion on it. I think agent discretion is quite a key one. And Guy, here's an interesting one from Jürgen. Customers do not want compensation. They actually just want their problem resolved. So
I would wholeheartedly agree with that one in certain circumstances. I think, Jonty, you're aware of my recent battles with a certain broadband provider who won't be named. But, at the end of the day, the conversations I had with the customer service team then were all about, please fix the problem for me, and not about how much you're going to pay me for the inconvenience that's been caused. So yeah, I'm with that, but at some point at the end of that process, you do actually need to recognize the stress that's been caused to the customer and do something to encourage that long-term loyalty rather than just fix the problem and then have them go away.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. So there's some... Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, sorry, there is a major difference between selectively using this form of compensation to really fix a problem and having a compensation program that as soon as somebody writes a complaint letter in, somebody sends them a voucher. And that really is not the way to fix the problem in the first place. And I totally agree. I've heard this so many times. They don't always want, or very rarely actually want compensation. They want to know it's fixed right for the next time.
Yeah, and I guess there's always a danger that compensation can actually start to drive the wrong customer behaviors if they start to know that. Right, thank you very much for that. We're now going to have a look at some of the technology. We're going to run a poll. How many applications do your agents need to help a customer? Be quite interesting to see this. The choices are 1 to 2 applications, 3 to 4 applications, 5 to 6 applications, 7 to 10 applications, or more than 10 applications. Now, Guy, you work in this sort of field all the time. What sort of numbers of applications would you think would be likely in this?
Well, I've seen the whole gamut, actually, Jonty. I've seen contact centers with contact center managers who've insisted that they only have 1 application on the desktop, and in reality, there's at least 3 or 4. And I've seen that. I think the worst case I ever saw was 47 applications running in one particular call center, with an average of, I think it was 9 applications touched on every single call. So quite a wide range.
Well, we haven't got a box for 47, so we're just going to put the results up on the screen now. What we're seeing overall is we're seeing applications in the largest is 3 to 4 applications, 43%, 22% of 5 to 6, 15% of 7 to 10 applications, 8% more than 10 applications. That's quite a lot of different applications that people are using to resolve a query there. What I would like to do now is drill down a little bit deeper into this and start to ask the audience, what is your biggest problem that you have on the agent desktop? So if you'd like to type into the box on your right-hand side of your screen, what is the biggest problem you find on the agent desktop? So we're starting to get the first responses coming through. Richard has said usability is one of the problems that they face. Anita has said the system is so slow. Speed is also mentioned by Annette. Jürgen has said user friendliness. Peter also has system speed. Rob Clark has applications timing out or locking. That's certainly one I've seen a lot. You know, you go for a break and then you've got to log back in, or if you've not been in for long enough. Speed. Internet Explorer speed. User-friendly, so systems, flow of the system also. Victoria says speed's the biggest issue. We're getting an awful lot of speed here. Mahmood has said complication of actions. Ben says applications crashing in the middle of a conversation. I can imagine that could be very, very frustrating there. David said it's not integrated with the platforms and user-friendly. The people that provide the solution do not understand the wider system impact. Kipros has said some systems operate only in Internet Explorer and some others operate in other systems like Firefox. Guy complains of performance degradation across domains. Quite a common one coming up here seems to be what Lisa's saying is it's not designed around the agent, but around what IT thinks. So certainly usability in there. Vinod has got problems with multitasking, talking to the end user and capturing case notes. Performing and troubleshooting is particularly difficult. So we've got quite a range. Maxim says it's just a complete mess on the on the desktop in his organisation. So
I like that one.
You've perceived the whole gamut here. I'm sort of I've been in a lot. I'm actually a little bit shocked by some of the emotion that is coming out of this issue, Guy.
I'm not shocked at all. I'm not shocked at all. I mean, I think if you go sit in a call center for an afternoon in the typical environment, you will see the stress and the hassle. Maybe one of Paul's comments earlier that 73% of this stress comes from the technology. Most of that's because most of the technology in call centers is not designed for a call center. There's very few pieces of technology that are actually designed to do the job that a call center agent does. And a lot of that relates to the complexities and the inconsistencies in customers ringing in with a variety of different complaints and a variety of different attitudes. It's very, very difficult to actually have a CRM system, billing system, and everything else all coordinated around call center agents when actually they're designed for finance people and marketing people and sales people. So, yeah. It causes emotion.
All sorts of things here. Paul, we've got a number of people that making comments here. You know, answers are buried on numerous streams. Dave says the challenges that business are facing is the cost versus upgrade business case, which is one of the big problems of, you know, we know there's a problem there, but it's, you know, I guess one of the problems is trying to convince the rest of the company to do something about it.
I have to say I'm appalled because we've been doing this for so long that the one thing we should still not be having an issue with is core technology. And it's back to exactly the points that are being made. And in fact, it just proves that our research hasn't changed much. The IT department might be very good at what they think is IT, but for goodness sake, when are they going to start listening to agents? Now, system stuff has got simpler. It's got easier to use. Just look at the development in our own PCs over the last 15 years. It's absolutely appalling. And yet IT departments, and to a lesser extent some of the other departments, and it just seemed to be almost protected from the criticism, whereas we in the call center are blamed for stuff that's not our fault. It's really scary, really is scary. It's not agents and managers that should be listening to this webinar, it's bosses.
I think you're right there. Dave says it's lost in translation as it's pushed up the company structure, and I think Jürgen here puts the nail on the head. We invest in all sorts of things other than tools. So with that, I think it's probably time to hand across to Guy to have a look at sort of some of the things from a technological perspective that can happen. So I'm delighted to introduce Guy Tweedale from OpenSpan. So Guy, if you'd like to take us through your presentation, looking at the topic of the efficient agents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonty, and thank you, Paul. Well, if I should start with a bit of a brief introduction of me. Guy Tweedale, I am the Managing Director for OpenSpan here in the UK and Europe. I guess I'm someone who's been working in the call center and customer service industry for quite a few years now, and as Jonty mentioned earlier, we've known each other for quite some time, more years than either of us probably wants to think about. I'm particularly passionate about improving this relationship between people and technology. And I think Paul pointed out a few moments ago that the technology is now at such a state where it should no longer be a problem. But unfortunately it is, and if we can get this people and technology connection right, it's going to drive better customer service and better things for our customers at the end of the day. I want to start off by just taking a look at the alignment between what's happening in the call center and what executives in organizations are actually thinking about. So these are some statistics from an executive priorities survey that was done by CMIQ, which is a division of IQPC, which is great, a couple of four-letter acronyms there, but I'm sure you all know the IQPC name. And when they went out to the executives and asked them what was a priority for the next couple of years, they said that the top three things that came out were people skills and training, business process improvement, and customer access technologies. So what we know is that the things that are important from a call center perspective are also reflected in what's important from an executive management perspective. And as Paul said in his presentation earlier, how companies invest in developing and retaining their people is critical to the business success, and is now, from this survey, looking like it's a high priority for the success of the executives. So if the execs want to do it and the people want it, then we need to make sure that it's actually coming together. So this topic's not just about the operational management and operational improvement in the call center, it's also about understanding how you can actually marry that to executive strategy. So, okay, there are many things in a contact center that seem to oppose the realization of this kind of efficient and effective contact center agent. And as usual, they fall into three buckets. There's the people, and that's all about training, talent, motivation, making sure the people are actually empowered to do the job properly and all that kind of thing. It's about process. It's about, that repetitive, what's happening time and time again. It's about complexity. I think actually one of the most important things there is adaptability, because I think as we grow the capability of our customer service organization, we ask them to become more and more adaptable to more and more different responses that are required from the customers. And then it's about technology. We've just done a little survey about what technology problems there are, and I heard all the usual ones. I heard the lack of integration, the lack of a user interface that actually matches what I actually do. So, green screens all over the place and things that come back from the dark ages. I actually was in a contact center about 6 months ago, and I was sitting there with a bunch of guys, and I don't think any of them was over the age of 23. And they were going through their training routine, and the green screen came up, and one of the guys just went, "What is that? Even my phone has better graphics than that." And he promptly got up and walked out. Didn't want to work there because it was a green screen. So, technology is a huge underpinning problem in this environment. But where these three processes and people and technology overlap is where, first of all, the biggest challenges are, but also the biggest opportunities for making things better. So you've got this visibility and control of what's happening on the desktop environment, and giving the agents the ability to interact with that properly and provide feedback in that environment is going to make things better. So it's not just about the agents themselves, of course. It's also about the management chain above them. And we've got to look at things from the perspective of what the agents want and also what the management want. And when I talk about the management, I talk about everywhere from team leaders all the way up to the executive in the organization. And really it falls into two areas really from OpenSpan's perspective. One of them is giving agents a better way to work. And for an agent, a better way to work means really having the tools they need to improve the way a process gets done using the technology that's available. Because at the end of the day, if you're a call center agent, when a customer calls in, the one thing that you want to do is you want to fix the problem as quickly and as cleanly as possible so that the customer goes away happy. Certainly my perspective from a customer, that's what you would want to do. The second thing is it means actually giving me the ability to give feedback on the way that I do things. And that means giving me the ability to tell people in the management chain above me in real time what's going on that's stopping me from doing my job properly. It might be situational, like an environmental thing. We're getting a lot of calls this morning about a product because the product seems to have developed a defect, or if you're a mobile phone operator, there's a network problem somewhere, or if, like I was on a train this morning, there were delays, people calling into customer service to find out why their train's been cancelled. Whatever it happens to be, as issues come up, it would be great if you could feed back to the organization. This system is running slowly. I'm getting a lot of calls about this particular product. I'm getting all those things. What do management want? Management want the other end of the spectrum. They want reduced risk. They want to make sure that the call is the only call that comes in to fix a problem. So they want everything lined up nicely so that when an agent takes a call, it gets fixed straight away. But they also want to make sure that that's done in a compliant manner that actually covers all the legal issues that are there, that is controlled, that is guided, that is process-oriented. In other words, the complete opposite of adaptability. So if we can deliver this better way to work and better way to manage, if we can give the agents the ability to feedback what problems they have in real time, it means we can respond to that and we can change things in real time. We can also start to look at monitoring activity and understanding behavior and trends before it happens and take action to prevent that. And we can also start to measure through a different set of metrics. And again, I think Paul mentioned it earlier. He talked about actually the right way to deal with an issue, not talking about average handling time, talking about appropriate handling time. You know, if it takes 3 minutes to solve a problem, it takes 3 minutes to solve a problem. If you try to do it in 2.5, you can probably guarantee that somebody's going to have to call back again because it didn't get done. Yep, nobody ever tells me, nobody ever asks. I think those were the top 2 points on one of Paul's slides, and to me that's kind of a really critical thing. I see it all the time when I'm in call centers. Nobody ever tells me what's going on, nobody ever asks me what I think. So if you can improve the impact on the agents, you can improve the impact on the business. We ask agents to do incredible things with very little resource. If we can make them better at it, we're going to reduce the cost to serve. We're going to manage to this appropriate handle time metric. We're going to optimize the way things are done and get this gold standard of behavior to come out. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to just run through a bit of a case study. And first example I'm going to go to today is actually, it's a bank. It's got more than 400 branches and has a fairly significant call center and sort of branch office operation. And when they started looking at a project with OpenSpan, their focus was on how do we drive down the average handling time. And the more they started looking into the due diligence aspect of this in the due diligence phase and started talking to the agents, they actually found that the biggest frustration for the agents, and therefore by default the customer, was the time it took at the start of an interaction to set up the call. So in other words, gathering information about who the customer is, doing the security checks on them, and then starting off in a process. And quite often, after they started the process, having to regather that information because they'd moved on from one screen in a system to another screen. And that information that they were putting together was critical to actually understanding how to solve the problem for them. So, middle of the due diligence, they changed the focus. They said, actually now, how do we actually build a view of the customer, this famous 360-degree view that's been talked about in CRM world for years and years and years, but actually do that in a way that's very agile and adaptable. And the project became about creating a 360-degree view toolbar on the agent's desktop that once the CTI passed a call over to the agent, that CTI would create an automatic search, the system would go away, look up all the information and present a summary of this customer, what's been going on, their bank account details, their balances, how many credit cards they've got, all those bits and pieces that allowed, and most importantly, how many times they called in previously in the last month so that they could immediately get to the root cause of the problem and solve it. Now, the focus had moved away from average handling time to actually looking at a 360-degree view. The net result of this was productivity was increased by over 20% because that view had eliminated redundant time-consuming steps and also dramatically improved first call resolution and dramatically improve customer satisfaction. So the net result of this was a huge, huge benefit to the organization by stopping thinking about average handling time and thinking more about actually how do we empower the agent with the right information at the right time to deal with the issue that the customer raises. So now we're going to have a little another survey. So I'm going to hand back over to Jonty on this one. This is about actually how many of you have got a 360-degree view of the customer.
So the question we're looking at is, do you have a 360-degree view of the customer? So if you'd like to vote on that now, the answers are yes, I have a 360-degree view of the customer. No, I don't, or I'm not sure. That maybe I'm not sure what a 360-degree view of the customer is. So if you'd just like to vote on that now, I'm guessing that the results are going to be quite interesting here. I'm not expecting a large number of people from the experience of the contact centres I visit. I must admit, I tend to get sat next to the best agent in the contact centre, so I don't always get the idea of how complicated some of these screens are, because a lot of those people can do it in the do stuff in their head. Just close the results and share them up here. It's quite interesting. 18% do have a 360-degree view of the customer. 51%, the vast majority, don't. And 31% are not sure, and I guess some of that may be what exactly is a 360-degree view of customer. That's an article we wrote on Call Center Help a couple of years ago, doing a sort of poll on that. Guy, that's quite a range there.
I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. 18% who say yes, they do. I'd be intrigued to dig in a little more detail of those 18% that do, to actually understand what does that 360-degree view mean and when does it appear. The 51% no and the 31% not sure. Again, those are areas where I think we tend to have perceptions that technology contains the information we need to handle the call. The not sures probably fall into the category of people who are saying, well, we should have one, but I don't actually know that I've ever seen one as a summarized thing. I think the other point that may be interesting to look at there is when in a call does that 360-degree view of the customer appear? Is it right at the beginning? Is it before the call starts? Is it halfway through? It's what drives that creation? And is it agile enough to adapt itself to each process and each type of call that's coming in? But it's encouraging.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just going to hide the results there. And just to change back to Guy, we've had a comment in, quite an interesting one. Says, I'm managing a team of internal advisors, internal help desk advisors within a bank. We're first-line IT. Approximately 80% of our calls are user errors from systems. Does that say it all? So
could well do. Okay, so thank you for that one. Right, I'm going to just walk through another example, and again, it's another bank. This one's a multinational bank based in the UK, the Banking and Financial Services Organisation, and in this particular case, they were looking to simplify the desktop environment, just simplify the desktop environment to streamline the way things were done. So this was all about gathering information to process particular types of activity and actually preparing that up almost like a case file, and that case file would then be used to resolve an issue, and then there was some automation capabilities added onto the back end of that to actually execute whatever the output was. And in this particular case, it was taking information, making some discretionary decisions on behalf of the agent themselves, and then the agent selecting one of a range of different hello, I've lost my...
I think we just have to from your screen wasn't coming up.
My screen wasn't coming up. Okay, how's that? Is it back now? Oops, show my screen. Yeah, you're there. Sorry about that. The challenge for these guys was actually putting together a package of information that allowed an agent to actually make a quick decision on, and actually a lot of this was back office stuff, on a particular set of activities, and then action that through either doing something with the account. In some cases it might have been blocking an account, it might have been sending an email out to somebody, or issuing a letter, and those kind of things. And the objective of the exercise was to actually improve the efficiency. 360-degree view, or a single view, or combining information together in one particular place was critical to this, as was actually automating some of the very basic manual tasks that these fairly highly paid agents who made decisions on behalf of the bank were having to do, hitting the keyboards and clicking mouse buttons and all that kind of thing. The results of this case are actually incredibly spectacular. The bank was able to reduce the team by almost a half, 46%, through natural attrition in the first 2 years after the project went live. And that's kind of very relevant in today's environment, where you're actually looking at understanding and managing the strength of an organization and the productivity of an organization without actually having to invest in lots and lots of new people. In this particular case, they had that huge benefit. During the period and subsequently, the call volumes into the center haven't reduced. So they're still handling the same volume of calls and the same type of calls that are coming in, but they've dramatically reduced the number of people needed to do it. The other thing that happened, and this was kind of a sideline that prompted a second stage to this story, is the average revenue per call, because they were doing quite a significant amount of cross-sell and upsell when they were talking to the customers, increased by 135%. At the time that labor and training cost savings were about 5.6 million in the first year. And the anecdotal story that came on the second half of this was, because the revenue per call was being increased, the bank introduced a reward mechanism based around revenue. So the amount of revenue generated out of teams and out of individuals prompted rewards back. And I think Paul talked a little bit earlier about how you reward those the contact center agents and how you actually motivate them to stay. The interesting thing is, this particular bank also offered did a rotation system where people were moved from one group to another group around the call center environment. And when people were moved away from this revenue generating area where they were able to earn bonuses to another area that didn't have this system, the first thing they did was put their hand up and say, can we have the same system we had over there? Because it helped us do cross-sell and upsell, and that drove revenue for the bank, and we got paid more. So I think it reflects that agents do want to actually do that. I also understand that some agents are not interested in doing cross-sell and upsell because they see that as a sales role. So again, it gives you some interest and insight into how making it easier for agents to do the job can drive benefits. I'm going to summarize now and just give you a little bit of background about OpenSpan as a company. We've been in the customer service business since about 2004. Globally, we're installed on about 300,000 desktops in 21 countries, and in the UK, we're very proud to have customers that include Vodafone, Royal Bank of Scotland, Lloyds TSB, John Lewis Partnership, Dixon's Group, to name a few of them. We're focused completely and totally on technology and solutions to meet the needs of where this sort of people and technology overlap is. Our better way to manage, better way to work approach in the last year has delivered an average of 21% productivity savings on more than 1.1 billion transactions around the world. We're very agile, we're very quick, we do things in weeks, not months, we deliver ROI in weeks, not months, and we do not change underlying technology and processes, we just add value to the interaction. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time and hand back over to Jonty. Thank you, Jonty.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Guy. We've certainly been getting lots of great feedback from the audience on some of the topics there, and we've built a certain number of those into the tips. So what I'd like to now run through is the time where we're going to open up the conversation to everybody. It's your turn to take part in the conversation now. So we're going to do top tips to improve agents' performance. There is a bottle of champagne for the best tip, which we'll take a vote on after the webinar. We've got a huge range already, so let's just plow straight into some of these some of the tips. Dennis has said the first tip is guide the agent during the interactions with the customer, and I guess, Guy, that's one that you could do that manually with cards, but that presumably is going to be a an ideal one for some technology.
Yeah, I think technology can add some value here, regardless of whatever systems you're using. What you want is the ability to have the system pop up and tell you what the next step in the process is before you need to do it. And more importantly, what would be context sensitive is the next thing to say to the customer, do with the customer, and if you're trying to sell them something, what you might be able to sell them. So yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, we've got one that seems to be quite common with some of the comments coming back. Nicola said, allow agents to be involved in developing processes and make them aware of the effects and actions to help reduce the scopes for error. Paul, that was quite common for a comment I was seeing in the comments coming back, that sort of agents weren't involved in the development process.
No, they're not, and particularly, even more so, might I say, the supervisor or manager who have been agents and are now looking at it perhaps at a slightly higher level. It is incredible that these users are not involved. And it brought up to me that there's a lovely point that Guy makes, that, what was it, senior management believe that customer access technology is an issue. I can tell you, if customers had to use systems like that the agents will have to use, they'll defect in their droves.
Yeah, I think it's a clear case for getting the senior execs down on the contact center floor.
Get downstairs
on the phone as often as they can.
I think there's another. I think there's another point, Jonty, as well. I really, because this is even stronger than even I believed, I just think we're going to have to put some time in to measure the delays in the system, the pauses in the system, the crashes in it, add them all up, and there's your productivity. Okay, you can, as Guy said, you can do the same or more work, but unfortunately with less people in some cases, but by natural attrition that's fine. But the efficiencies we're losing purely through the technology are much higher than I probably even would have thought today.
And that's a good one for certainly building the business case. I know we got a lot of people quite interested in, how do we put together the business case for that? And certainly measuring the crashes and those inefficiencies on the desktop is certainly quite a good way to do it. It ties in with the comment here from Kipros. Work with them, listen to the agents and the difficulties they're having while serving customers. Sometimes there are things that we think we know, but we don't, or we have some idea of the difficulty, but it's not necessarily realistic. This interesting one from Sarah. Get agents to relate to clients as if they were family members. I think that's very good. I certainly get the sentiment there. Sometimes if you hear the conversations over our family dinner table, I wouldn't want that to put those onto a customer. But I think there's quite a nice sentiment there.
Got to remember the family you like.
Well, exactly, Paul. I mean, I've had some pretty interesting conversations with some call center agents who thought I was a member of their family until I told them what I thought of their service. There you go.
So I certainly think that the sentiment's right there. Sally says, a tip to improve agent performance, act upon the feedback given by your staff, whether it's from your customers or staff themselves. This is a golden opportunity to improve customer and staff experience and should never be ignored. And that was one of the empowerment questions we asked was, do your agents have the ability to give feedback, back through the system so they can improve their performance and the company's performance overall?
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, I think the number of companies that I think probably pay lip service to getting feedback from agents and customers and, say that we're doing surveys and we want your feedback and all the rest of it, but you very rarely see any change that comes as a result of this. This is a great tip. This is a great tip. Listen and deliver benefit.
So we've got some a bulk lot by Jürgen here. So I'll just read them out. Recruit the right people, clear communications and objectives. That's often one of the ones that's is there. Paul, your point again. Don't overmeasure. I mean, I'm starting to get a bit of bee in my bonnet about measurement in a lot of call centers, and certainly every time we survey people, what's the most common metric? It's average handling time. We really ought to be throwing that one away, I think.
Well, that looks like one of my slides, actually. Yeah, absolutely, and don't think that this is to improve performance. This is purely because the bosses don't trust the people. You know, I don't want to be socialist about this, but for goodness sake, they shouldn't be. The measure of the people is the performance of what they get out of it, whether it's revenue levels or profit levels or customer satisfaction levels or whatever. It isn't to do with meeting silly metrics.
Okay, let's jump down the list of tips to some of the ones further down the list to give everyone a fair chance. Paul has said, educate each specialist on the big picture and how they contribute to the success or failure, and tie compensation to profitability or a KPI of the centre. Certainly, you know, big picture I think is quite key, and certainly I've seen some quite inspiring CEOs who sort of take their vision and actually put that down in terms of things like loyalty and feed that into the contact centre where they can actually have a strong impact on that.
Yeah, Jonty, I'd just like to comment on that one. The key issue here is that the so-called non-customer facing people are the ones that should be having these sorts of targets and these sorts of pictures. Because the problem is that we all thought that we'd solved this so-called internal customer problem, and we haven't. Other departments do not realize they wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the call center, and they wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the sales and revenue. And people like finance staff and marketing and IT really do have to know their place.
Strong words, and I think I agree with that.
Jonty, I'm getting fed up with it. This is stuff that we've been talking about for 14 years. And these poor people that have come into this fantastic webinar and are telling us things aren't that much better. And I really thought they were. My speeches have sort of moved on a little bit from, for goodness sake, make sure you've got the right technology. I'm going to have to go back and pull all my old slides out. I've got work coming in for years.
I feel a customer service manifesto coming out. We need to start a campaign and get on TV, I think. So here's a tip from Annette, and Paul, I may actually not be joking on that one. Here's a comment from Annette. I think the one way to get more productive agents is to ensure that agents are engaged. Communication, strong relationships must be built in order for agents to see they're part of the bigger picture. It's critical agents feel valued, and management can do this by knowing what motivates each individual and taking steps to motivate. So it's about treating people differently, I guess. Build an environment of recognition, behavior and performance that is recognized and repeated. All this boils down to ensuring the agents are engaged and they believe their manager is looking out for their best interests. Some very interesting words. David has said, I believe homeworking is the way of the future. By putting more trust in your agent, to work from home, you'll automatically increase agent productivity. Homeworking also has many benefits, including morale, cost, productivity, and it's particularly useful in certain circumstances such as bad weather. I think, Guy, you went through snow on the way to come in here.
I did indeed.
So businesses could potentially get more free agent hours. Let's pick another one. Annette, again, I think it's critical management have an open door policy, not just in theory, but truly practice the concept. I think I won't go through this one all. It's certainly management by examples. Let's pull up some ones from the middle. Jürgen says, sometimes I'm not sure what was first, the objective we want to achieve or the system around which we have to tailor the objective. I guess that's a bit more than chicken egg. But there's a strong technology message in there, isn't there, Guy?
Yeah, but I did like the Annette point that does bring it back to earth. We've also got to make sure that the agents are performing.
We do. Jürgen, I like your comment there. I think it's great. I mean, I think I've seen lots and lots of circumstances where actually the measurement of the agent's performance has been based around which systems they use rather than actually the job in hand. And actually that does pull up a point that sometimes we actually employ technology without knowing what that technology is used for. So getting an understanding of what's going on in a desktop environment and actually how technology is used to support a process is kind of critical before you start thinking about actually how you're going to measure people using that technology.
Yeah, well, we're going to come back to tips in a short while. What we're going to do is we've got a couple of questions that I want to see if we can take a view on. Ben has said, how do we effectively brief agents on minor changes to the service, as more often emails circulated and not read by people? This is a problem, I guess, of information flow.
Yeah, so I think it falls down to what kind of technologies you're using in the contact center. When you have 20 different applications on the desktop, it's very difficult to actually find a methodology or a portal or some way of delivering information to an agent that allows them to actually understand and allows you to understand whether they've read it. When you start looking at technology that allows you to create things like a 360-degree view toolbar that's independent of everything else that's going on the desktop, then you start to create an environment where you can collect information from the agents about what's going on, get that performance feedback, but also give feedback to the agents about their level of performance, about other things that are happening. There's a lot of terminology around the expression gamification at the moment.
Indeed, yeah.
And this is a reflection of the gamification that is going to come into the contact centers, where they can start to look at how their behavior is and how their performance is and how their system's performance is in comparison with other people in the same environment, and almost kind of create a sort of self-fulfilling motivation circuit in there. And I think the flow of information is critical to that. You've got to be able to tell them what's going on, but you also have to collect information from them about what's going on.
Okay, we're going to jump back to a couple of tips now. Sarah says that agents can be more productive if they could score their own calls on call monitoring. That's quite an interesting one. Certainly, I did a workshop on performance management recently, and one of the comments people came back is people that are their own worst critique. So I've got the words slightly wrong on that, but they're their own fiercest critic, not critique. And also, one of the things I've seen is also when you buddy agents up with each other and get them to score each other's calls, that can be very powerful because it's sort of peer review rather than management review, and the behaviours that come out of it could be quite different. Jürgen says support, develop, empower. I think Jürgen's really going for this bottle of champagne here. And empowerment, I mean, Paul, that's talked a lot about. I think that this support, develop, empower is actually quite critical.
It is, but I do think it has to be earned. I'm not just a believer in putting it down there for the sake of it. I think people have to show that because bosses are so scared of it, I think you have to prove that it not that it would be abused, but whether people would know how to use it properly. And so that's why I would suggest that if you're not doing it at the moment, then start to pick the best agents, the most experienced agents, and take it from there. And I just have every belief that you would just go on and on and on and do it more often.
And we've had a comment from Kipros for Ben. She goes, how to get the messages out. We've built an intranet kind of website that is used only by the customer service team, where we share all the information, even small changes, to everyone. Information is categorized, processes, procedures are updated. Is this the sort of thing you've done with your product guide, building sort of internal little portals?
So from an OpenSpan perspective, we will tap into any information source. I think from OpenSpan's view of this kind of thing is that's another application. And we would say take the information that you contain in an intranet knowledge base, however you want to describe it, and bring that into the 360-degree view, almost like a ticker tape symbol at the bottom that's continually reading out. You do want your agents to go look at a source of information on at the beginning of their day and all that kind of thing, but to me it's better if they're continually being updated during the day so that they're reacting and responding as things come up, rather than kind of absorbing it at the beginning of the day and then going away and then not looking at it again until the next day. Kind of depends on the environment, depends on the culture.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Guy. Well, I'm afraid that's all that we've got time for today.